Good morning, everybody. This is Jerry Stinson, and I'm going to be interviewing my neighbor, Gabriel Sid. We did three parts, or an interview with three parts to it back in July, and we've agreed that it's a good time for an update. Here we are in the middle of December 2020. So good morning, Gabe.
Good morning, Jerry. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice cold day outside. Well, it's not that cold, actually.
No, it was beautiful. It was beautiful this morning when I walked the dogs.
So we're going to do a couple things. First of all, I want to review some of the stuff that we covered back in July, but we won't spend a lot of time on it because it is available on those YouTube videos. There are three of them, and then we'll cover some old news, so to speak, and then we'll get into the basically how do you see everything now, about 6 months after the other interview. So I'm ready if you are.
Let's go.
Okay. These are pretty much cut and dried. At least I think you have answers ready to go with these. First one is, when did you go into the hospital?
April 12th, Easter Sunday. That's why I'll never forget it. It was Easter Sunday, April 12th.
Okay. And how long were you there over the total in the hospital?
The stats are 40 days in Greenwich Hospital, 30 of those days in the ICU, 21 of those days on a ventilator.
Okay. So you said a 40 days total in the hospital. And
yeah, it was from April 12th I went in, came out May 17th, I believe it was a Tuesday.
And again, so how many days on a ventilator?
21 days on a ventilator. Yeah. It was two different, to be specific, there were two different stints, I guess. The first one, I was on it for, I believe, 18 days straight. They took me off. I was still struggling with oxygen. And actually, just to sidetrack a little bit, I actually met with the respiratory doctor who actually intubated me. And she gave me more insight about that decision where I was still struggling and they weren't sure what to do. And she said, we got to intubate him again and give him some more support. And they're like, his throat is very swollen. We're not sure we can get the tube down this throat. She's like, we have to try. He's like, and it's kind of scary and very, sure. When she was talking to me, Jerry, I was almost not in the room because I was just, visualizing that moment and how terrifying, I'm sure for them, they're professionals. So it's what they do. But for me, listening to her telling me that discussion literally about deciding how to save my life, because I was struggling again. My vitals are dropping again. My throat apparently was swollen. They weren't sure they get the tube down my throat again. She's like, we have to try. And she put the tube down my throat. And then I was on it again for about 3 days. But that's what I needed. And that's what helped me get over whatever I was going through at that moment.
Yeah.
But and actually, one quick thing. She actually clarified, I think one of the videos that we did last time, I had a hallucination about, I thought it was real because it felt real to me, that I was awake when they were putting me under the second time, under the ventilator the second time, and that I was choking and that I couldn't get oxygen. She said that I was never actually conscious, that what I was probably feeling in the hallucination was them putting the ventilator down my throat that second time.
Yeah.
But she did give me that peace of mind that I actually had not quit on life, that I didn't say, stop, let me die.
Yeah.
That never happened, that it wasn't easy to put the tube down my throat the second time because I was swollen. And obviously they don't want to just jam it down my throat and do all sorts of damage.
Right.
But that was probably what I felt. So it was pretty crazy to hear that story from the doctor's perspective. Like, how often do you get to hear a doctor discuss that, after the fact?
So you went in the hospital on Easter Sunday, and it obviously was pretty serious just to be going into the hospital. You didn't want to go.
At that point,
but then it seemed like you had to. And when did it get really serious? Like, oh my God,
Well, at that point, they were in the news and everywhere. They were saying, don't come to the hospital just because you have COVID. Only come if you really are in dire straits. Yeah. And to be honest with you, it was Sunday, Easter Sunday. I probably should have gone in on maybe Saturday night or something. But again, everyone was saying kind of stay away. They could, they're not gonna be able to help you unless you're really sick.
Right.
And so Sunday, when my wife saw that my lips were changing colors, I wasn't making much sense. I was struggling to walk to the bathroom. Then that's when we called the doctor, and they said, "Yeah, go to the ER."
Yeah.
But as far as when I knew I was in trouble in the hospital, when I started getting it's called the ICU rapid team, when they were coming to my room, because I wasn't in the ICU when they first checked me in. I was in a regular, I guess like a regular wing or something.
Right.
And it's called, when you code, I think I've learned that it's called. So when I coded, they would call in the ICU rapid team. And I guess what that means is that my oxygen got to a certain dangerous level, and the ICU team would come in and administer some kind of quick therapy through oxygen or whatever else they were giving me to try to get my vitals back up and my oxygen back up. So that happened. I think it was 2 or 3 times, and that's when I knew that when you get a visit from the ICU rapid team, it wasn't good. And obviously, once they said we have to move you to the ICU, then I knew I was in serious trouble.
So roughly from the time you went in on Sunday until that happened and you went into ICU, how long was that?
It was fast. It was, I think if I'm not mistaken, I was in the ICU by that Friday.
Oh, but I mean, so it was several days when you were not.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they try everything. They try to give you oxygen and obviously at that point I had a fever, so they were fighting the fever. Turning on my, they try to get you prone on your stomach, but I had all these contraptions on my chest, monitors and all this stuff and hoses and everything. So being on my stomach, first of all, it's not comfortable being on your stomach for 8 hours. So we would try to go on the side, so that for those days they try to get your lungs to open up to take in more oxygen yourself. But what was happening, I kept getting worse and weaker. And my body just couldn't breathe on its own. So they kept giving me more and more oxygen. Like I said before, it started with the nasal, and then they gave me the full mouth one. Then it was the combination of the both. And they were giving me as much oxygen as they could outside of the ICU.
Yeah. I think it was last week, Rachel Maddow on her show, she put up a clip. She puts a lot of clips up from medical people, technicians and nurses and doctors and everybody. And she talked about just the process of flipping somebody over so that they're on their stomach. And she said before she actually saw what it involved, she thought, oh yeah, big deal. And then she showed somebody being flipped, how many people were involved, the doctor directing traffic and saying, okay, basically on 3, do this. And it was very involved. It required a whole lot of people. And wow, and that's just one.
I think we saw the same.
Go ahead.
I think we saw the same bit, Gary, because I remember hearing about that, how it actually isn't just do it. Like it has to be a thought out decision, because other things can happen in that position. And like you said, I'm not a small guy, so I can imagine it wasn't that easy for them to be flipping me over, every 8 hours. I guess it was. What was it? It was 8. It was a 16 hour. Yeah, it was 16 hours on my stomach, 8 hours on my back.
Yeah. And then multiply you times all the other people that need it. Yeah. So you have to call in all of these people just to do that. So they can't be doing anything else right then.
And also, like again, I got a chance to talk to one of the nurses, and the nurse was saying how they take a lot of care, because obviously you're knocked out. You're in a medically induced coma. So they have to make sure that your limbs are in a normal position, because you can't say, ow, that hurts, or it doesn't feel right. So they have to make sure there's nothing pressing, there's nothing hurting, and nothing's twisted the wrong way and doing damage to other parts.
Right.
So it's a lot of work. I've learned a lot since the last time you and I talked.
And we're going to get to a lot of it. Yeah. Okay, so once you left the hospital, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but then what? What'd you do? Where'd you go next?
When I left the hospital, because I was still physically, because again, when you're on a bed for 40 days and knocked out for about 22, 23 of those days, muscle atrophy is a big problem. So my muscles atrophied completely. I had no muscles. I had no ability to stand on the side of my bed. Sitting up on the bed was very, very difficult. It took me about 3 to 4 minutes. using all the strength I had. Even when the bed, the head rest was up, it still took me a lot of effort to sit up on my bed. So, slowly in the hospital, they're there to, get you back living and breathing. It's not necessarily a place for physical therapy, right? Because all you really have is your bed. So we did basic stuff, lifting my leg up in the air, sitting up, standing up, taking a few steps with a walker. So very basic physical therapy. So once I was safe enough to leave the hospital, and I had 4 negative COVID tests, so they knew I was negative.
Yeah.
Then they released me to a physical therapy facility, which actually is like a nursing home on High Ridge in Stanford. So I spent about a week there. I remember when they checked me in. I remember the social worker who kind of checks you in. She said, "Yeah, we'll probably have you for 2 weeks." And I stopped there and I was like, "Excuse me, I'm not going to be here for more than a week." I was like, "There's no way that I'm going to be here without my family for 2 full weeks." I'm like, "I'll give you a week and I'm going home in a week." And that's what I did.
And as we said before in the earlier interview, there were a whole lot of people back here saying, "When's he coming home? When's he coming home?" Of course, there was big doubt from just about everybody, whether we expressed it or not, about your prospects. But then once it looked like, yeah, you're actually going to come home, then of course we're going, when? Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's see this guy. Yeah.
He's over there sleeping in Stanford, taking it easy.
No, we didn't think that. We just thought there's a lot more to this than anybody ever figures. You just don't, unless
and that's the thing. Like people just focus on on some stats, right? Infections, hospitalizations. It's how I took up a bed. I took up an ICU bed for 30 days. I was in ICU.
Yeah.
So for 30 days, I used that one bed. So there's a lot of things people don't talk about. And then the rehab. I took up a bed in rehab for a week, and I had a month and a half, 2 months of at-home physical therapy. I had 3 different physical therapists come to visit me, plus a nurse, 2 to 3 times a week. So basically, I think at least 4 days out of the week, I had someone coming to the house to do something with me to help me recover.
So you're sort of answering my next question. What happened when you finally got home? What else would you mention about your experience once you got home, the earliest days and weeks?
I want to start with just that first day. It really meant a lot to see you there, Jerry. See my neighbors out there. It was really, really special because, and this is one of the aspects that it is covered a little bit now in the press about the isolation of COVID patients, that, you really are alone, right? And again, the hospitals are great. I had a great Zoom nurse. I feel like we're family now. We're Facebook friends. I talk to her quite often. But still, it's not having your wife, your kids, your friends, your family available to you. It makes it a lot more difficult. When you're in a hospital room, in a rehab facility, it makes it challenging emotionally, mentally to push through when you don't have that support structure. So coming home and seeing my wife, my kids, you, Jerry, they're recording with your iPad, Corey and Liz and Tom. It was really great seeing you guys. So I was like, I'm home.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I don't want to equate it to a war, because I'm not saying that what I went through was a war, but it was a very challenging, the most challenging time in my life. And to come home to that kind of welcome, it really did feel like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna get through this. And that was the beginning of, like I said, the first thing was, as you saw, like I walking up my 3 steps in the front door, wasn't easy. I had to take 1 step at a time, and 3 steps, and I was winded. Seeing my dog Ruby really went nuts. Like she really cannot contain how happy she was to see me. So that was really nice. And then just that first day, just being able to walk around my house, and it was kind of funny. Like my kids and my wife had full-time nurses, 24 hours a day. They wouldn't let me walk up or down the stairs without having someone in front or behind me, because I still wasn't 100% at home safe, as they call it. I still was very weak. So it would take me a while to go up a flight of stairs, and I'd be completely winded when I got there. So that was the first few weeks, is just trying to build up that stamina. And you saw me kind of walking from here to the library. which is, now I know exactly about, 0.15 miles. That for me, that was a goal, just to walk from here to the library, sit at the bench, get some fresh air. And that was the kind of what you were saying, like, in some of the questions, like the ability, like we always take that for granted, right? You and I walk our dogs all the time, but that's actually, that's a blessing to be able to walk down the street, sit on the
Yeah.
library bench, and just take in this great town that we live in, the beauty. It was a beautiful day. It was like, I guess it was May, beautiful May day, blue skies. And, it was really great just to be able to sit there and enjoy life and enjoy the second shot that I was given.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking as you were talking about walking up steps, even 3 steps, you're not old. You're not an old guy. I'm getting
no,
there. I got some years. And one thing I realized is you take things for granted. Kids rebound easily from stuff, usually. And when you get some years on you,
it's
you
hard.
realize all the things you were taking for granted. This is nothing new that I'm saying, but even steps. I mean, I was in the hospital many years ago and had to relearn how to walk and so forth.
Hmm.
And I mean, at least for a while, you are very appreciative of some things that
Yeah.
are just,
What
they're second nature, but
Well,
now
it's
they're not.
funny
Yeah.
you say that, but even I remember, because my shoulders, really, were, and my shoulders are the one piece that I'll get to that later, are the one piece that haven't come back completely. But I remember my wife would tell me when I would walk, she was like, "Move your arms," because
Yeah.
you like think about it. When we walk, we just move our arms, right?
Yeah.
Like I was so atrophied in my muscles that when I would walk, I wouldn't move my arms,
Yeah.
and I would just kind of be walking. I guess like Frankenstein's monster, right? Just stiff legged, stiff armed. And my wife was like, "You gotta." She would remind me, "Move your arms, move your arms." So then I would try to like find the rhythm. Have these exaggerated movements, but yeah, things like that. You have to relearn how to walk, right? How to use your whole body to walk, because I was focusing just on my legs. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You forget you got to move your shoulders. You got to move your arms. Like when you walk, it entails everything. So slowly, I would like, after in the first week, it was just walks from here to the library, and then it'd be from here to Corey's Burger Shakes and Fries, then to the firehouse, and then it's a little further. And now I'm up to the point where I can walk about 4 miles, 4.5 miles around almost all of Byram, and I love it, and I
Yeah.
feel great about it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, now that you've been out of the hospital, out of rehab, you've been home, you've been walking, you're working up endurance and so forth. It's been over 6 months, right? So it was May when you got out.
Yep,
Yeah.
late May.
And it's been 5.5 months, something like that, since we had our other interview. Um, do you see the experience any differently now? And if you do, how?
And this may get a little personal, but the one thing that people say, are you angry? And I'm part of a COVID Facebook group, a support group, and some people are angry, right? Like why did I get sick? Why did I get the bad version of this? And one thing I told my kids in Thanksgiving is that I'm not angry. Only because when I got sick, my oldest daughter got sick with me, and she was initially she was as sick as I was. The fevers, the coughs, complete 100% fatigue. Like we were both down for the count, right? And I remember, like, I try to be a very spiritual man, and I remember just telling God, if someone's gonna get the bad version of this, let it be me. Don't let it be Anna, my oldest daughter. And that's what happened. Like I ended up, almost dying and going through what I went through. And my daughter, after 2 weeks, thank God, she rebounded and she's fine now. No lasting impact from COVID that we can see. So I tell people I can't be angry of what I went through, because I asked God, if it's going to happen to anyone, have it be me, not my daughter.
Hmm.
So I can't be angry, right? So I was definitely afraid, and when
Yeah.
you go through something with that much fear, when you're that afraid of, again, and once I went to the ICU, I knew what I was facing. Once the doctor told me the ventilator was going to be my next option, my only option at that point, and we were discussing remdesivir, and I was one of the trial patients that was getting in initially. You start thinking about everything, right? I'm never going to see my kids. I'm never going to see my wife, and all these horrible, horrible, horrible thoughts. And that's real fear. So it's
Yeah.
hard to go through that and have it not change your life or your thinking in some way. And I think aside from the physical, aside from the fact that I had to learn how to walk, I think it again, not that I would ever want to do this again or go through this or wish it on anybody else, but in my case, it did give me a renewed perspective and a renewed appreciation for what I have and for life. And like I said, just walking my dogs, like I couldn't even, when I came back home, I couldn't walk my dogs for, I think it was around 2 months. And the first morning when I walked the little one, that was great. And then a week later, I walked both of them, and that was great. And now I'm walking 3 dogs.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard, and it's hard to and one thing I also talk to my doctors and nurses when I saw them again was I use them as a source of motivation. I think again, I don't want to pass judgment on anyone who's survived this, but for me, surviving this and to revert back to my old habits, I think would be, for me, would be an embarrassment, right? From my perspective.
So you're looking at it as an experience that has made you more appreciative. That
Yes.
you're sort of doing some New Year's resolutions, but you made them over the course of the last several
Exactly.
months.
That's an excellent way of seeing it. Yes.
And let me get back to the anger thing, because you really haven't felt that at all. And I wouldn't have thought of that. And you're telling me that some of the people in your COVID group have it. Would you say most of them do?
No. I think some, there's a lot of anger, especially right now, just around the whole world about some people who don't, who don't acknowledge it or who don't give it the proper, I guess, respect, right? Because you got to, this is a pretty crazy virus. If you disrespect it, it can bite you, and it won't let go. So yeah, I think there is a lot of anger. Like with anything, like why me? It's almost like that why me, right?
Right.
And I've never once said why me, because I asked for it, right? I said, okay, both my daughter and I have it. God, give, if you need someone, take me. If you need to give it to someone, give it to me, not my daughter. So I can't then turn around and say that I'm angry that I got it.
I'm going to ruin the narrative for a minute. Have you seen a movie called The End, I think, with Burt Reynolds? He swims out. He's going to kill himself. So he swims out till he's too far away to save himself. And then he changes his mind, of course, and he starts talking to God. And he says, God, if you save me, I'll go to church. I'll never do this and this and this. And then as he's getting closer, he starts, it seems like he maybe will make it back. And then he backs away from some of these resolutions. By the time he gets back to shore, he says something like, I'll go to church next Sunday or something. But he made a deal with God. Well, you made one, and you're not making jokes about it. You've taken it quite seriously.
Yeah, and yeah, because I was again, it's not like I'm some amazing miracle man, but there are days where I feel I don't have the same motivation, but I've been trying to really push myself to be a better person with my kids, my wife, and also just with my own self, like with my own body, right? Like I wasn't the healthiest person before. Now, through my insurance company, they have a program for anyone that recovers from some kind of traumatic event, heart attack, surgery, and obviously now COVID. They offer this program where you get a health coach, and then through that health coach, they figure out what you need as far as additional support. So I have a therapist and I have a nutritionist. And the nutritionist, we just met maybe now it's almost 3 weeks now. And she's really helped me in understanding how I mentally approach food and how to, eat, not only watch my calories, but what type of calories am I eating? Which food groups am I consuming? And since I've done that, I've actually begun losing weight again. So obviously I lost a ton of weight through the COVID experience, and I was slowly inching back up, even though I was watching my calories. But again, I just wasn't as active as I probably could have been, and I wasn't eating the right stuff. Once I changed that approach and I started this little 5K training program on my watch, which I don't know if you see me, Jerry, running around at night. But I've been trying to be more, again, I haven't run consistently. I can't even remember the last time that I've been actually running consistently. So I started with the walking because again, my legs, I still had a lot of nerve pain in my legs. So running wasn't an option. So I would just walk 4 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles. Now that my legs can take it a little more, I'm running. So that's kind of the transformation physically, mentally, spiritually that I've been under. And the other part is just kind of like doing this kind of thing, helping and sharing my story, because I could easily say, I'm fine, leave me alone. I survived COVID and then let's
Yeah.
move on. But
Do you think there are some people with that mindset that are thinking, I went through it, it's none of your business?
Well, I think I've seen even on the support group that people may be hesitant to say that they've even had COVID because there's a stigma, right? Where they had COVID, let's not
Oh,
let's not go near them, or they're defective or something like that. But I see it the other way, where I want to help people, and I even, when I reach out to my doctors and nurses, I said, let me know if there's any patient that you have who's struggling with this mentally, and I'd be happy to, again, on a Zoom call or meet them in person with the proper protection and all that. And like I know how it is to have that fear and live through that. And I think only someone who's gone through that can appreciate and understand what it feels like. So I'm all about sharing my experience with the hopes that someone who's watching this will realize how real this is, how life altering it can be, both negative and positive, right? But you don't. I don't know where I think it's a song, but you don't want to dance with this devil. You don't want to. It's just not worth the risk, right? Yes, you could be the lucky one that gets it and is only sick for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and then nothing happens. But is it really worth being on the other side, where you have either what I went through or no hospitalization, but months later you're dealing with respiratory issues, brain issues, blood clotting, all sorts of issues that people are now discovering, even more so for those that were never hospitalized, who were never as sick as I was, but yet they're discovering a lot of new things with this disease that we're learning every day, how much damage it does,
yeah.
short term and long term.
Let me ask you about your shoulder. You mentioned it, and tell me about that.
So the shoulder, I'm not, again, with a lot of these things, doctors just don't know, right? But what I think what happened was, in this area here, and it's almost in the exact same symmetrical spot on both shoulders and in my quads. I think something must have been pressed against me when I was on the bed for that long, and it ends up damaging the nerves. And when I came out of the hospital, that pain was all the way down to almost to the elbow on both sides. The nerves have regenerated, where now here it feels like where it should for the most part, and the real numbness only starts around here. So I think that's where the point of contact was, where the damage happened. Mm-hmm. So since it's so high on my shoulder, rehabbing the shoulder kind of limits me somewhat. But
so you said shoulders, and what's the other body part?
My I guess on the left and right side of my legs, on both sides of my legs, around the quads, I have the same kind of nerve damage. So I've been meaning to talk to one of the nurses to see, like, was there something that was holding me so I wouldn't move when I had the ventilator, and maybe that was pressing against me, and that caused that nerve damage. I'm not sure. I'd be curious to ask them that. But I've been, like I tell people, if this is what I'm left with, then I'm fine. Like, if I have to deal with this the rest of my life, then I'm fine. But even the shoulder, I think that's why the shoulder rotation, the shoulder strength has not come back as well. I'm actually doing therapy again this month to try to regain more mobility, and it's better. Like, I can kind of go, but it takes some effort to get there. But again, that's just part of the rehab. It's part of working. For the longest time, I couldn't even think about doing a push-up. This week, I started kind of testing out the shoulder, and I can get about 3 or 4 push-ups in before the pain gets a little bit to be too much.
Let me know when you get up to about 8, and then we'll have a little competition. Yeah.
I'm getting there. I'll get it back. It's just going to take me a few more months
to
get my shoulders back up.
What do you know about COVID now that you didn't know or didn't appreciate earlier, either before you ever got it or when you were home afterwards? What insights about COVID do you have? Are there any?
And this is where I've obviously done a lot of I read whatever I can from medical sites or journals about this. And the one thing that's consistent, that they still don't know everything about this virus. They still don't know why, like with my daughter and why I got the bad version. She didn't. She's my daughter. She shares half my genes. There's still a lot of unknown stuff, but what I do know is, you don't want to risk getting this thing. There's no way. You can't tell. It's not based on age. It's not based on body weight. Like people would say, oh, you were a little heavier, so maybe that's why that's your precondition why you got sick. But then why are all these athletes getting it? Why are some athletes getting, heart damage from it? Why are some athletes having lung disease from it? Like you can't, it's hard with a lot of other diseases. You can pinpoint to certain genetic factors, a certain history, a certain, they go, yeah, you got it because of this. But with this thing, you can't.
Which leads me really to my next question. Would you or your family have done anything differently if only you had realized something? And I bring that up because I saw somebody on TV. I don't know if it was a celebrity or a friend of a talk show host or whatever, who got on and had it and had almost died and said, we did everything right. I mean, we're very careful. And he got it anyway. And then he says, so you gotta take this thing seriously. And that's your message. You gotta take this thing seriously. But I asked you this earlier, in July. Was there anything you're aware of that you screwed up on in terms of being as safe as possible?
The only thing, Jerry, is that it's hard to answer that because I don't know how I got it, right? If I knew that I got it by doing X, I would say, well, obviously I shouldn't have done X. The only thing I can pinpoint is that, like I said before, when we stopped working and going to the city, what the doctors were saying back then was, don't wear masks because we don't, we're in short supply. We need it for the doctors. As long as you don't touch your face, wash your hands, socially distance, you'll be okay. And that's what I was doing. So I do remember, we were mostly locked up at home like everybody else was.
Yeah.
I did go one day to 2 trips to Walgreens and Stop and Shop, I think to buy medicine and groceries or something. And that's the only place that I think I could have been exposed, and that's probably where I would have gotten it. Yeah. But there's no way of telling. There's no way, obviously back then there was no contact tracing. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say, the only thing is, I'm a fan of Howard Stern, and, if I had, his ability where I could just completely lock myself up in a place and not ever go out. But it's, someone has got to buy groceries. Someone's got to, do all that stuff. So
let me break in because let me break in because I have been pretty much isolated. I'm a Zoom person, and I do tons, as you know, I do a whole lot of Zoom meetings with people for various reasons. But I do go to the store. I go to Costco. I go to Stop and Shop. Basically those 2 places. I wear a mask, but I go a lot. And, so I don't know what else there is, but I could get it. I just, I guess, as you say, they still don't know enough. They don't know enough about how this happens. They have some ways to reduce your probabilities, but they can't guarantee anything at this point, can they?
No, because if you think about it, even the mask thing, right? I think at some point they said you can still get it through your eyes, right? Because your eyes are still a pore, right? You can still get it in, but so now we gotta wear like face shields. So I don't know. I think the one thing I have read is the concept of a viral load, that if you're around someone who's positive and you're with them for 15 minutes or longer, that amount of viral load would then get you sick. So if you're with someone, like for example, if you and I are walking, right, and you have it and I don't have it, and we pass walking, we're only passing for a few seconds or less, right? So that's not enough of a viral load for you to transmit it to me. But if we stop and talk.
So even if in passing or we talk for 4 seconds, even if I send a little bit of bad stuff your way, it doesn't meet the requirements.
Don't quote me on this, but
right.
But from what I've read, it's the viral load. The scary thing, they said the viral load could be over, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here. Sure. That's 15 minutes total. And then, so obviously that's why they recommend wear a mask. And now I see people actually wearing a double mask, right? Which is, probably not a bad thing. But, I also go to Stop and Shop, not often, because I try to do most of my shopping online. but every once in a while, there's something that you forgot or you need right away. So I've gone to Costco as well, but I try to be very cognizant not to be with people. I don't talk to anyone at Home Depot. I
Yeah,
try to use the contactless payout, the checkout thing.
yeah.
So I try to limit my exposure to people, and I always have long sleeves on me when I go out. So I use the sleeves to touch things, right? The door
Uh,
handles, the buttons, the stuff that I'm.
yeah,
Even now, when I go buy something, I don't pick it up unless I'm going to buy it, right? I don't want to
um,
pick up something and put it back.
yeah.
So I'm
I've
more
been
aware of stuff.
I've been very guilty on those counts. I'm not busy wiping down the handle of the shopping cart,
I
or
do that too.
I'm
Yeah.
not worrying about surfaces. So I'm asking for trouble.
No,
And
again, services again, and that's where I go a little bit more because of what I went through. But according to the CDC, it's very rare to get it through a surface. But to me, a shopping cart, it's a lot of hands touching it.
yeah,
So I know at Whole Foods, which it's really the only place I go to now, they have a little wipe station, a little wipes. So you just pull a wipe out and you wipe
right.
your card down,
Yeah,
and then you feel a little more safer doing it that way. And then also Whole Foods, after each person uses the screen to punch in whatever, someone will come in and wipe it down as well.
yeah.
So I think the world is being smart, at least in our area. They're being smarter about it. But again, it's all up to us. We're all responsible adults. Uh, we all have a responsibility to ourselves and our families to be around. Like that's one of the things also on the personal side. I saw the impact excuse me, this had on my kids, and I got a responsibility to stay healthy and be around for my kids and my wife. So that's why I do what I do. That's why I wear a mask. That's why I try to avoid people I don't know on the outside.
Yeah.
That's why I wipe down my shopping carts because I'm trying to do whatever I can to be around for my family for as long as I can.
You're just naturally answering some of the questions I have, like how has the experience changed you, or what's your awareness now that you didn't have? Do you have any unanswered questions about what's being how it's being handled, what we're learning as we watch and listen to reports? Any doubts or unanswered questions about prevention or treatment?
Well, again, not to get on the political side because again, it's not a political issue, right? It's a medical issue. I don't understand people's unwillingness to wear a mask. Like I really don't get. There's been tons and tons of evidence on the fact that this wearing a mask does not hinder your breathing, does not cause any damage to your lungs or respiratory issues. Wearing a mask is the safest. It's one of the only things that we really can do to avoid getting sick. And I don't understand people's like very strongly opposed to it, almost like you're offending them. And yet they'll get in a car and buckle their
Yeah.
seatbelt because the law tells us to, right?
Well,
Right?
I'm gonna guess that many of them have been told that it's hogwash, that this whole thing is a hoax, and so forth. So they're being manipulated, and their
Yeah.
freedom is being impinged on if they do things like wear masks or do social distancing or stop going to bars or stop going to indoor restaurants. So that would be part of my answer to why so many people are opposed to what you consider to be
Yeah.
basic
And that's
precautions.
that's where I get a little frustrated. And trust me, I get the economic damage this virus is doing and the pandemic's doing, and I try to do my part. I've tried to order from local places. I try to do my part in helping local businesses stay afloat. But the one thing I did read some in the Greenwich Time about they talked to one of the restaurant owners and then asking them about the restrictions. Right? Are these restrictions hurting you? And he said, it's not about restrictions because it's about the pandemic. We need a vaccine. We need a solution to this issue.
Yeah,
Because even if there was no restrictions on my restaurant, I would not be 100% capacity because people are not going to come out and risk their lives without a vaccine or some kind of solution. So it really isn't about the government imposing restrictions. Is we need to have a way to feel comfortable that this virus is not going to kill us, so therefore we'll feel safe to go eat at a hibachi restaurant on Greenwich Avenue, or go shopping or do things again. And I think that's where we need more focus on, is teaching people And I get the whole vaccine thing, because I know that's the hot thing right now, because tomorrow the first vaccines are being delivered and people are hesitant. And I get being hesitant about a vaccine, but from what I understand, of all the trials they've done and all vaccines, no one has died from a vaccine. Yes, they've had an allergic reaction in England. I'm sure for the first couple of days or a day after, you may feel a little woozy, but no one has died from this vaccine.
Yeah,
The
I do
virus
wonder.
will kill you. The virus will destroy your life. The virus will cause permanent damage to your body.
Yeah.
And so one thing, there's a high risk that you, if you get it, you will get some sort of effect from it, from death to being very ill for a short or a long time, or a vaccine that will prevent you from doing that.
Yeah,
I just,
I do wonder from, there are a lot of people, some of whom I know, some of them are quite intelligent and they're anti-vaxxers or they're very reluctant. And I do wonder when it comes their turn to get vaccinated or not, I wonder how tough they're going to be. Tough in the sense of stubborn. Um, we shall see. And it's not just for them, it's for everybody else too, of course. That's one of the things about vaccinations is it's not just to protect the individual, but all the rest of us too.
well, the thing that people, again, I think this is where I think as a country we need more education, is the vaccine itself. All it's doing is protecting you from getting sick. You can still get the virus. You can still carry it and give it to someone else. It just protects you from being sick and end up dying from it.
Yeah.
So we still, like if I were to get the vaccine tomorrow, which I'm not eligible for it in this phase, but I would still wear masks. I would still practice the same guidelines we have now, because I'm you and I both know we're not going to have 100% compliance with
Yeah.
with the U.S. or with vaccines. So the virus is still going to be out there spreading until we have, herd immunity, if that can ever be possible with this thing. It has to be a combination of people who've been infected with it and the vaccine. Unless we achieve that, this virus is going to continue spreading.
Yeah. Okay, a couple quick questions and then
Mhm.
we'll call it a day, call it a morning. Would you identify something positive from, you sort of already have, but anything in addition, a positive that came from this experience?
The one thing that, beyond just, obviously from my perspective, as I've explained, that I've kind of taken this as a second shot of life and taking get better care of myself and my body, and being closer to my family. But I think overall, as a country, we've all been, since March, for the most part, been with our families, right?
Yeah.
And gotten, spend some valuable time. I know a lot of people who said, I probably wouldn't have seen my kid as often as I have, because they'd be in college or with friends or here or there. We've been able to spend a lot of times with our family that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I think,
Yeah.
as
And
overall as a country, that's been, or as a world, that's been a positive result, or a very, very thin silver lining over a very dark cloud,
yeah,
is that
well, and of
we've been
course,
able to spend time with our family.
yours is a close knit family. I mean, you
Yes.
do a lot of things together, and it's very obvious. It's visible that you guys love each other and care about each other and do things together. But there would be some families that are not better off for being, shall we say, cooped up
True.
as much as they've had to be. But yeah, I get your drift, and
Yeah.
the point is well taken. Finally, any words of advice for people who are skeptical? You've already sent the message out, but what would you, if you had one last thing you could say to them, what would it be?
Again, I'm a big believer, Jerry, in that we're all adults, so we all have to make up our own decisions, and then likewise, as a result, we're all responsible um, for the results, right? For what happens. And I think, if you, for whatever reason, don't believe in it, just do your research, right? Talk to people like me, talk to people who've been through it. This is real. Like, I have no reason to be lying. I didn't fake almost dying. I didn't spend 30 days in the ICU because I thought it was a cool place to be. The one thing, actually, again, is a prime example of the effects of COVID. I've I consider myself very lucky in my recovery, and how far I've come. But the one thing that I've noticed recently, in the last month or so, my short-term memory has gotten pretty bad. long-term memory is still there. I can recall things from many years ago, but even this little nugget of, I wanted to mention it to you during this call and I forgot it. There's certain things that just slipped my mind completely. And it's not like I'm a forgetful person, because I'm not. I've always had a very good memory, but something that this virus did in my brain, my short-term memory is pretty bad. I have to write things down almost immediately because things will leave my mind. So
Yeah.
talk to people like me. And just because I'm out there walking and running doesn't mean that I'm now COVID free and you know, I beat this thing 100%. This thing still has an effect in my life right now. So talk to people and educate yourself. Don't just believe some rhetoric from a politician, either side. Again, I'm not picking sides in this call, but just inform yourself. Like, this is a real thing. There's a lot of doctors and nurses who are sacrificing their lives, right? Because you know they're in the front lines of this battle, and you owe it to them, right? Like, I owe a lot to these people in Greenwich Hospital, and I will always forever be grateful for what they did, but I owe it to them to you know, educate people, to talk to people. Again, I'm not going to stand in front of Greenwich Avenue and preach, but if someone comes to me and asks me, I'm going to share. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be open. Just ask people. Ask your neighbors, because you know, it's hard for you not to know someone in your circle that's been impacted by this. Ask them and make up your own mind, and you'll see this is real. This is not a hoax.
Okay, and I think you've accomplished that with this interview, with your message, and it's a good way to finish up. So we're going to share this with people, and people who watch it might benefit quite a bit from it.
And so, the last thing I want to say is wear masks, wash your hands, socially distance for you, for your family, and for the doctors and nurses who are out there fighting for us every day and night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.